Ladies and gentlemen, President Trump just dropped an absolute bombshell on all of the money-hungry pharmaceutical companies that have been ripping off American taxpayers for decades now. And so, folks, I have a feeling that you are going to like today's video. Now, as many of you might remember, in early May, President Trump signed an executive order that effectively forced the pharmaceutical industry to start offering medicine to Americans at the same lower rates that they've been offering to people in other countries, specifically Europe. And so, yes, in case you didn't know, what that means is that for decades now, our own pharmaceutical companies have been charging all of us here in the USA way more for the very same drugs that they've been similarly selling overseas. But so what this executive order did is mandate that now, for the very first time, the pharmaceutical companies aren't allowed to charge Americans a higher price than what they've been charging elsewhere around the world. And so really, what this means is that now the pharmaceutical companies either have to increase their prices in Europe to try to maintain their profit, or just accept that now they're going to have to start making less money and drop costs here in America down to what they've been at over in Europe. And to really put this price discrepancy into perspective here, take a look at this. When looking out across the board, Americans have been getting charged 3 to 4 times more for the very same drugs from the very same pharmaceutical companies that are currently being sold in Europe. Seriously, folks, we have been getting ripped off. In fact, check this out. The United States alone produces 70% of the pharmaceutical industry's revenue, despite having only 4% of the world's total population. And by the way, just to be very clear about this, that's not only because all of us here in the United States are abnormally sick or something. No, once again, folks, we've been getting ripped off. But now, folks, there's one massive problem with this entire situation as it relates to President Trump's executive order. But before we take a look at that, I do want to say real quick that if you guys enjoy the daily news updates, please consider subscribing to the channel because it really does help a ton. But okay, take a look at this. You see, ever since signing this executive order back at the start of May, none of these pharmaceutical companies have actually agreed to comply with President Trump's mandate. And so, folks, this is what brings us to today's breaking news. Take a look.
This is to the CEO of Eli Lilly from the President of the United States. On May 12, 2025, I signed an executive order delivering most favored nation prescription drug pricing to American patients to stop global freeloading and guarantee that Americans pay the same prices enjoyed by other developed nations. Right now, brand name drugs in the United States are up to 3 times higher on average than anywhere else for the identical medicines. This unacceptable burden on hardworking American families ends with my administration. Most proposals the Trump administration has received to resolve this critical issue promised more of the same, shifting blame and requesting policy changes that would result in billions of dollars in handouts to industry. Moving forward, the only thing I will accept from drug manufacturers is a commitment that provides American families immediate relief from the vastly inflated drug prices and an end to the free ride of American innovation by European and other developed nations. Accordingly, I'm calling on Eli Lilly and Company and every manufacturer doing business in our great country to take the following actions within the next 60 days. Extend the most favored nation pricing to Medicaid, guarantee most favored nation pricing for newly launched drugs, return increased revenues abroad to American patients and taxpayers, provide for direct purchasing at most favored nation pricing. The President's team, including Secretary Kennedy and Administrator Oz, stand ready to implement these terms. The President expects to further engage with them immediately in good faith to deliver relief for American families. Make no mistake, a collaborative effort towards achieving global pricing parity would be the most effective path for companies, the government, and American patients. But if you refuse to step up, we will deploy every tool in our arsenal to protect American families from continued abusive drug pricing practices. Americans are demanding lower drug prices, and they need them today. Other nations have been freeloading on U.S. innovation for far too long, and it is time they pay their fair share. I look forward to your binding commitments to each of these goals by September 29th, 2025, and my team stands ready to assist with implementation questions. Thank you for your immediate attention to this vital national priority. Signed, President Donald J. Trump. Again, to the CEO of Eli Lilly, this letter in its form has been designed for each of the 17 major drug and pharmaceutical companies in the United States, and we're happy.
And so, folks, that is a lot of information to break down, so let's get to it. As she said, many of these life-saving drugs actually only exist in the first place because the research has been subsidized and paid for by American taxpayers like you and me. So in reality, not to be petty here, but the truth is that if anyone should be getting discounted prices for all of these drugs, it's all of us here in America that actually helped pay for the research, not random people from all over the world. But so not only has the Trump administration given all of these pharmaceutical companies just 60 days to comply with his executive order and start dropping prices, if they don't, President Trump is going to use, quote, every tool in his arsenal to force them to comply. And so you all know that that threat right there has all of these predatory pharmaceutical companies absolutely shaking because, as we've already said, all of these pharmaceutical companies are massively subsidized by all of us, U.S. taxpayers. The reality is, all of these pharmaceutical companies actually know that if President Trump really wants to start putting the squeeze on them, so to speak, it is completely within his power to do so. But so folks, here's really the big takeaway with all of this. After decades of getting taken advantage of by all of these globalist pharmaceutical companies, President Trump is actually working to not just put Americans first, but to also put all of our healthcare first as well. The reality is, there is absolutely zero reason why a medication should cost $100 here in the USA, but only cost $20 over in Europe. But that's exactly how things have been for decades now, and so that is exactly what President Trump is putting an end to. Here's the truth. America is the richest country in the history of the planet, but still, we have people that are being sent into crippling financial ruin and debt because they can't afford the costs of basic life-saving medications. Life-saving medications that are 4 times cheaper everywhere else in the world, by the way. And the reason why this entire problem has even manifested in the first place is because a bunch of anti-American globalist pharmaceutical companies have gotten together and decided to run a racket on the American people. And so, in essence, it's this anti-American racket that President Trump is shutting down. He's saying, hey, you can either start treating the American people with the respect and appreciation that they deserve, or you are going to pay a very serious price. And so, folks, as I like to say, I don't know about all of you, but hey, me personally, this is exactly what I voted for.